Hey everybody, welcome to What's Your Point Overtime, where we extend, sometimes get a little looser, a little more conversational. There we go. Hey, look, I wanted to ask Jackie this. Do you think that Governor Greg Abbott is now going to play the long game on choice? And, you know, all the cards are kind of with him. He just got reelected.
Sure.
He put a lot of his political capital into this battle. He's got a primary coming where he's endorsed some and obviously not going to endorse others. Do you think he comes back around? This is a battle he's not going to raise the white flag on.
So I don't know if you've noticed, but the governor's relentless, right? And so what he did prior to this session is that he went and visited with many business groups, many chambers. He's going to do that once again. If we look at the numbers, he's just slightly under 50% in the rural areas. So this time focus more on the rural areas, try to shore up support there. When you shore up support from those areas, they then go to their elected officials. And that's how he plans to tackle it. But yes, you will be seeing this again. I mean, it's not something he's giving up on.
Okay, Doug and Wayne, you know, rule number one, follow the money. Follow the money. And this is ultimately becomes a money deal where the rural superintendents, who we've kind of labeled as feudal lords in their land, the biggest employers, they feel like this is going to cut out of their pie ultimately as the, and I'll use another hackneyed phrase, the camel's nose gets under the tent. You know, will they give, you think, Wayne, eventually?
I think you could convince some rural lawmakers to give, because again, I think you're right about that, but they're also, these public schools are so vital to a particular community. The real problem is if we don't have school choice, then we need to blow up most of the urban school districts. Where I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times. Ethnic politics and contracts for your buddies and your friends is destroying it. It's destroying it, and it's destroying it in the city. It's destroying it in the county. Look, that is, I think, a fundamental problem with government, right? Is we could afford a lot more stuff to help a lot more people if we really wanted to, if we cut out the crap.
Yeah, I mean, Wayne makes a good point, Doug. I mean, you know, our old friend at the teachers union, Gail Fallon, said, like, you know, HISD and the city of Houston, you know, their majority Latino populations run by black machine politics and handing stuff out. You know, Wayne took a shot at just the way it goes down. And I'm going to come to you in a second.
To be fair, the Hispanics did it too when they were in charge.
Well, yeah, so, you know, and so, you know, do we need are these failing? And I think that the numbers we talked about earlier, that African American Democrats, a majority, favor a choice option. I mean, you know, and is that more a reflection of their disappointment with the options they've got right now?
You know, when I think about school board politics, it's about the nasties. It's like church politics. You don't want to get involved in it almost, you know. You know, in terms of why, you know, people are turning toward the possibility. Yeah, there's great disappointment in our public school system. I think there's great disillusionment with it, and I think it's not just, you know, among particular ethnic populations. It's all over the place. I think there's a lot of disillusionment with it, so I don't find it at all surprising.
Real quick, single member districts in school districts have destroyed the place. Everybody just cares about their little kingdom, right? And not that I'm a big fan of city council, because I think most of them are chicken, but there should be at-large members on a school board to sort of make sure that we are caring for everyone and not just this is my little kingdom, and these are my few schools, and I don't care about anything else. I don't care about any other diversity, using that word.
Paul Castro, is there any other major urban inner city school district in the country that is a shining beacon of success?
So
think hard.
Well, I don't have to think hard. I mean, one of the realities is, and this is where people just don't face facts. So when you look at the state data from Texas, from anywhere, there's a direct correlation between performance and poverty, right? It's just there. To pretend otherwise is to be stupid. How do you overcome that? You overcome that with additional funding and additional resources to the kids, right? If this works as it should, what happens is we take a look at it, we find high quality instruction materials, we pay extra dollars to get the best talent into the schools that have the biggest needs. No one's playing the long game here when it comes to, okay, so if we have an entire generation that we just wipe out and we say, oh, there's nothing that we can do about them, that's too bad, or, oh, we got to help, the Smiths pay for St. John's. So we're going to sorry.
Take a sip. This is
Muddy
our
away.
time.
Well,
We're
it's
losing
allergy.
Lucy.
Sorry. When that happens, you have this entire subsection of America that is going to be impoverished, undereducated, and without hope. Those are the things that, to me, are going to lead to the dissolution of our country. That's where we should be investing our money in public education for that reason. But what's happened now is we're saying, oh, well, those schools are failing. Well, here's the reality. None of the kids at my school are going to be able to afford to go to St. John's on that voucher, right? So even if that voucher is $10,000, they're not going anywhere new. Where are they going to wind up? They're going to wind up at some fly-by-night, made-up school that some, guy makes up,
Right.
brings that money in, and then goes away in 2 years. So the solution as proposed is not going to meet the need that I think all of us have. But when it's presented as a question of, do you prefer school choice? People are like, yeah, of course I prefer choice. When they say, well, that voucher is going to be presented to a school, they have the option to say, no, you're not the kid we're looking for. And good luck at your next school. Here's a school you can go to. That's problematic. And I think people haven't really looked into this. They're looking at it at a very surface level. I'm for choice, and I want choice done correctly.
And he hits on one point, pardon me for it, but the way these polling questions are posed, you've been involved in polling, if you said, do you like choice? Oh, yeah, okay, sure. Who can be against choice? Sometimes I wonder about the validity of some of the polling on this, to be honest.
Bill, you served on the HISD Foundation, didn't you, at some point?
For a long time, yeah.
And, these are not new problems. What I hear is almost the need for wraparound services, basically, wake up to nighttime services for families, for kids who are just poor. Is that really the solution?
Everything that Paul said, I agree with 100%. Schools represent the community in which they're located. And if you have a failing community, you're going to have a failing school in that community. And that's why there's a huge divergence within HISD. We have some great schools in HISD. We have some of the worst schools in the country in HISD, and they reflect the communities that they're in. The question is, if you're living in one of those communities where your kids are going to a bad school, should you have some option to get them the hell out of there to some better school? That's really what the question is, and what the correct mechanism is to do that. Look, I agree that what we need to do is to pour more resources into these kids that are not getting it at home. I agree with that 100%. But the problem is we've seen so often that we pour those resources and they're not used correctly.
There you go.
Now, if Paul Castro if I could turn all the money over to him and let him do it, that would be great. But there's a lot of principals out there at HISD and these school districts, these particular schools, that are not a Paul Castro. I'll tell you a quick story if you've just got a minute. When Terry Greer was the superintendent, I was doing some advising with him, and there was a principal in a school district, African American, who they caught stealing money, just flat out stealing money, okay? Terry called in the principal and said, look, the principal had been in the school district a long time. We don't want to cause a big deal. Why don't you just resign? We'll have a nice retirement party, and we'll send you on your way. And this person said, absolutely not. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not going to quit, and you can't fire me. And Terry said, I think I can. And he fired her. She appealed the firing to the school board. It was upheld on a 5-4 vote with all 4 African Americans voting to keep her in the school. Now, that's what's wrong with just saying, I'm just going to throw more money at the public school system, unless there's also some kind of real reform at the same time.
Yeah, I want to bring up the issue of magnet schools, because they were talked about in Austin as, hey, you've got choice. You can send your kids over to DeBakey, or you can send them over to Carnegie, or the school for the. But not all kids can qualify for those schools. And there's another problem.
And they're also way oversubscribed.
When
all of them
parents, the sharpest, most talented kids and the most committed, involved parents go to a magnet school, that makes the school they leave that much less equipped to succeed. Brain drain, talent drain, leadership drain. I mean, any thoughts on magnet schools? That's okay.
I don't, but I will go into Bill's point. Remember North Forest ISD?
Yeah.
Northwest Houston? Tons of money, tons and tons of money, right? I investigated that place a lot. Everybody was giving contracts to their mama, cousin, brothers, nephews, right? In virtually every program, right? The problem in government, which is why I sort of rail on it a lot and why I've spent my whole life investigating it, is because they do not have respect for public funds. I will also say, not to offend parents who I know in many cases are poor and work 2 jobs, there is an acceptance of a certain reality in neighborhoods that are poor, that if they didn't accept it, if more people didn't accept those realities, like the kids in their schools, right, and the gang fights and all the other nonsense, if those parents stepped up. I remember years ago having to do a story on a charter school or an after-school program where they were like bribing the parents with like dirty movies to make them come to meetings, right? If you have that lack of responsibility when people have children, you know, we gloss over a lot of this sort of societal stuff, but can I tell you something? Have a kid, take care of them.
Look, the quality of life surrounds the type of school that's in that community.
Sure.
We all know that. That's why Sugarland was thriving. That's why Katy ISD. That's why Lamar. A lot of parents want to make sure that they have free education, but high quality free education. And so that's why there's always going to be a pushback every time we talk about the voucher system or school choice from the public system, because they know those dollars are going to be transferred, and it's not just from the schools, but it's also from the neighborhoods and from their communities. And so we're going to continue to see that tug of war unless we tackle it appropriately at the level in the House and the Senate.
I think it bears mentioning that we are not exactly, Abbott's effort is not a trailblazing type situation. There are 30 some odd states that have some form of choice, and their public school systems have not collapsed as suggested on the floor of the Texas Senate, on the floor of the Texas House by the teachers' unions. You know, why are we so afraid?
I mean, I think the other thing here that is causing a lot of angst for the public school system, you know, in the future, we're going to have fewer kids, not more, to teach. HISD is now 50,000 students over the last 6 or 7 years. If you look at all the demographics, there are going to be fewer children to educate, and so there's going to be more and more schools that need to be closed because there's not going to be enough people in those communities to support them. And so all of a sudden, the public school system is feeling the pressure of that. I mean, HISD is down by 50. Do you think we've reduced administrators by a proportional amount? I kind of doubt it.
Well, probably.
But there is an
after the state takeover.
After Miles, yeah.
But there is an expectation. You mentioned Katy ISD, where I raised my kids. I remember the first time I went to a parent PTA meeting, right? The place was jammed. It was like 97% turnout, right? Too many of our, look, I believe government's become a Christmas tree, okay? Trying to make up for people's lack of responsibility. That's, I think, a fundamental where I stand. And I think part of that is educating your own kids, setting expectations for your own kids. And that means saying ugly things like perhaps people should just have babies everywhere and then dump their kids and move on to the next girl of the week, okay? That is what is destroying the fabric of this country. I believe that we expect government to take care of everybody's personal problems, and I'm quite honestly sick of it. I don't want to.
But the problem with that attitude, Wayne, is that while we can heap blame on the parents all you want, the kid didn't choose to be born. And so we can just say you got a crappy parent, and therefore it's just bad luck for you.
So the alternative-
but the problem is that ends up coming back on us, because they're the ones that end up out there in the street committing the crimes, having to put them in prison. It causes all sorts of
It's already
societal
happening,
costs.
and look at the investment we make, and it's happening anyway.
I know, but
Look,
just say parents are to be more responsible, and so if they're not, just tough luck.
I didn't
That's
say
not,
tough luck.
That's not an answer.
That's not what I said.
That's not an answer.
I didn't say tough luck.
Well, what do we do then? What's the solution?
Oh, you don't want me to tell you what solutions are, okay? Because our HISD, for instance, right, which is, and it's like Cleveland ISD, that rural school district up here, being flooded with 8, 9, 10, 13-year-old kids who are coming from education systems that are years behind. They are being allowed, and I'm veering, but being allowed to not keep up. They drop out. They then kill someone's mama, okay? Look, I'm not saying that we should ignore it. What I'm saying is the problems, I am sick and tired of having to take care of people because they decide to do something stupid. I just am, and I think a lot of people are, Bill.
Look, for adults, I'm fine with that, but kids, it's a different situation.
So as a person who's on the front lines, I can tell you this. 29 years in school, 25 years in school leadership. When I was the principal of Lee High School in Houston ISD, it was the lowest rated school in the state of Texas. It was 5 years of being in the tank, and I was brought in to do a turnaround under Greer. And there is nothing that those kids did that made them deserve to be in a school that was that dysfunctional. Literally, feces flowed down the hallways
Totally agree with
because
that.
it was an out of control, just disaster of a school. Gang members hung out after school to make sure that the OGs could walk across the street safely. 4 different times we were told there's going to be a drive-by after school today. The LPs are going to come and get the cholos. So this is my life, right? And not one additional resource was sent to our school other than extra police officers. We had 7 police officers for 1,900 kids. 7 police officers for 1,900 kids. And we needed all 7 of them. It was that kind of a school. But for 90% of the kids who were there, they did not deserve to be forgotten just because that they're screwed out of the system. Maybe they came here illegally or their families did or whatever. And what we have not figured out is how to help those kids get better and contribute to society in a way that they are givers, not takers. My deep concern is we're looking at all those things and we're saying, well, the solution is vouchers, right? Well, what actually happens with the vouchers? Ohio is an example. 80% of vouchers went to families who were already sending their kids to private schools, right? So that's not adding to the economy. All that's doing
That's
is
a
wealth
tax
transfer.
rebate.
It's a wealth transfer to people who can already afford to send their kids to private schools. They don't have to take kids with special needs, right? So that's not parent choice. If I'm a parent of a special needs child and I come and I say, I want to send my kid to your school, I know what the response is because I've heard this before. Oh, we don't have the right program for your child, right? But I know a school that does, and they're going to charge you $40,000 a year to educate your kid, like at the Joy School. Well, $10,000 does not equal 40, so now you're going to send your kid back to the just down the street school that now has fewer resources to handle the same need. And that's my concern.
Paul, I don't know if you know my personal history. It's been in the Houston Chronicle, but
Yes.
we sued HISD 5 times, won 3. My sons finished school not in the public system, for the vast majority of it. I'm still paying for some of it. HISD failed my family because, education. We took our grievance through the process. Hearing officers told HISD to fix the problem. They wouldn't. We resued. I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible. And so they failed Garrett. They failed my son. And so we went out and would it have been good to have, or for families who are being failed, to at least have some subsidy for the extensive costs that it takes when that's not the situation, but I can't, my kid has to be educated and I need to get him somewhere where it's going to happen. I would like to see that subsidy happen for those families.
I agree.
And it goes to what Bill was talking about. You can't blame the kids, okay? So you're Lee High School, and I went to Bel Air, right? But even back then, Lee was a nightmare kind of school. Okay, the gang members, right? At my school, they would have never allowed them to be in any organized way on campus, right? So that's what I talk about expectations, right? We need to start holding teenagers responsible too. A lot of these schools are infected by a bunch of teenagers who may have saw their dad go to jail or may, come from a crappy home. I mean, I don't know, but we can't just say it's adults, because you know what? A lot of the crime is being committed by 14 and 15 and 16-year-old kids.
My dad was a 60-year educator. I mean, it was literally, he was retire, rehire. And they used to ask him, Bill, what's the difference between kids today and the kids 25 years ago? And he said, well, back then there were the good kids and the punks. And then there was the majority in between, and the majority in between gravitated towards the good kids. Now, he says, the majority gravitate towards the punks. And and what he's saying is a larger, a whole combination of things: parental failure, society, social media, change in mores and values. And I don't know.
I grew up in Brooklyn schools, right? We were the Italian kids. We had to cross into the Puerto Rican neighborhood to go to schools, right? So I grew up in school in that sort of ethnic environment, okay? But even then, we used to fight with garbage can covers and stuff, and sometimes an occasional bat or chain.
That explains a lot, Wayne.
It does, because I got whacked a few times. But even that pales into comparison in the way we allow these teenagers to behave at a lot of our schools today. And so, while I agree with you, can't blame the kids, we've got to have a standard of excellence that makes that less likely to happen.
Here's what I can tell you. The gang leaders at Lee High School never got in trouble.
Yeah.
Never got in trouble.
Yeah, there you go.
Because that's how so they knew that if they got in trouble, they got kicked out. But we knew who they were. I negotiated a peace with the gang leader of the Cholos because they were kidnapping girls and raping them across the street.
Yep.
And those are the kinds of things that were happening, and it was a thing that, I wish there were simple solutions for the things that plague us.
There aren't.
But there aren't.
Right.
I'm told that in Europe, at around 8th or 9th grade, people choose an academic path, and some go into technical or vocational training. Do we need more of that to fit the jobs, to re-engage? I mean, because there seems to have been a point when vocational programs were either diminished or everybody needed to become.
They're really making a big comeback right now. A-Leaf ISD has a big, huge program on auto mechanics, and there's quite a bit of that being reinstituted right now.
And you have groups like the Independent Electrical Contracting Group. They're tying in with a lot of these junior colleges, because not everyone is going to get a degree, but you have an outlet or a resource through these organizations to get a very good paying job. I mean, I came to the States because my dad was recruited by Brown and Root. He was a welder. When I tell him what welders make today, he's like, are you serious? I mean, it's really could be
And
very
yet those
lucrative.
welders, those vocational people who are going to make 50, 60, 70, 80, 90,000 dollars a year will never be able to afford a house.
Jackie,
will go into debt.
Professor, how well equipped are as a whole, are your kids to handle the content that you need them to grasp?
Well, I love the younger population. I actually learn as much from them as they do from me. So I probably do a little bit more than a typical professor, and I've been told that I do. But I will say that some of them are very, very well prepared, and it is depending on where they're coming from. Some of them, though, just basic skills are missing. And it goes back to where they're graduating
Basic
from.
skills like what?
Reading and writing?
Grammatical, just
Literacy.
grammatical.
Can't write.
You know, I don't want to disparage anyone, but it's you can see a difference based on where they graduated from high school. Also, your environment makes a big difference. Who they're with. I mean, some of them are affiliated with gang members. They've told me that they are, and so you can tell. And I have one student in particular. He told me he was a gang member, made straight A's, and then all of a sudden he stopped coming. I never found out what happened to him.
Wow. Hey, we're about 2.5 minutes out, and so I wanted to give each of you 20 or 30 seconds to say something nice to people. Bill, you're good at that.
Well, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas to all my Christian friends, and Happy Holidays to all my people that follow another path. There's something about the Christmas season, whether you're a Christian or not, that we think about hope and peace and goodwill to men, which are universal things. And so I'm glad we have this holiday season to reflect on that every year.
Professor?
Also, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and something that I alluded to in the show, we are coming out of the pandemic and all of the unprecedented times the last couple of years, stronger and better than ever. And we're very blessed and should be thankful for that.
Paul Castro.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I ask our Houston community to go out and do a kind act. Do a kind act for someone who's next to you. It's just a temporary suspension of indifference. And if we all do that, I think we'll have a better community.
And wonderful that you've got the blessing of a new union marriage woman in your life, and that's great. You're owed.
Thank you.
You're owed. Doug Miller.
Well, of course, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, or whatever makes you happy. And the other point is, David Brooks just came out with a book called How to Know a Person. It's a wonderful book that points out that we need to try to understand each other better. We need to get to know each other. We need to look at the person handing us the bag at McDonald's through the window, look them in the eye and say thank you, and try to relate to each other a little better. And that's my New Year's resolution for next year.